Let's start not with a movie, but with the universe itself. Forget the idea of a divine architect or a grand, elegant design. Instead, think of it as a spectacular accident, a fundamental error in the fabric of nothingness, a kind of cosmic miscalculation that resulted in, well, everything. The stars, the planets, the whole chaotic spectacle wasn't part of a plan. It was a glitch, an indifferent and positively charged void that wasn't ever supposed to exist in the first place. Now imagine being a conscious piece of that glitch. You live your life inside this vast, fundamentally broken system where everything can feel a little bit pointless, a little bit stupid. You look for a grand purpose, a hidden meaning to the whole show, but you're constantly confronted by the sheer, random indifference of it all. You are a thinking, feeling fragment adrift in the aftermath of a cosmic mistake, trying to make sense of the senseless. But what if the most meaningful act you could perform isn't about finding an escape, or a universal truth that fixes the whole broken machine? What if, as the philosopher Slavoj Žižek proposes, the real event is far more disruptive? What if you look out at the vast, idiotic spectacle of existence, and then you violently choose one tiny, insignificant part of it, one person, and commit to them with a blind and brutal passion? What if the words, "I love you more than anything," are not a gentle promise, but a declaration of war against cosmic indifference? In that moment, you don't find harmony. Instead, you create a private, sacred world by rejecting the public one, building your own center of gravity in a universe that has none. You aren't correcting the error of existence. You are doubling down on it, choosing to find your everything within the beautiful glitch itself. Have you ever had that nagging feeling that something about the world is fundamentally off? Not just politically or socially, but on a deeper, cosmic level. The philosopher Slavoj Žižek takes this feeling seriously, suggesting that the universe itself might not exist for some grand reason, but as a kind of cosmic catastrophe, a glitch in the nothingness. Now, someone out there is probably thinking, okay, that's a pretty bleak thought, but if existence is a mistake, isn't our job to, fix it? To find a logical solution, to smooth over the cracks, to patch it up with a spiritual purpose? But let me ask you a question about that. What if trying to fix it is missing the point entirely? What if the only authentic way to deal with an error isn't to erase it, but to lean into it, to assume the mistake so completely that it becomes your own? What if you were to stare into that cosmic absurdity and, instead of trying to find an escape hatch, you embraced it? There's a word for that radical act of acceptance, of affirming the flaw. We call it love. And this isn't some edgy modern take. This idea echoes through centuries. Think of the old Gnostic myths, which tell of a divine being named Sophia, who, in a moment of error, accidentally created our broken, material world. A cosmic oops. Yet, they believed that within this corrupted creation, humanity carried a divine spark, a glimmer of light, capable of redeeming the whole flawed enterprise. It's like the replicants in Blade Runner. They are, by definition, an error, a flawed copy of life. But their struggle, their suffering, and their capacity to love is precisely what makes them feel so real. Their love isn't a distraction from their flawed existence. It's the very thing that validates it. It becomes the ultimate rebellion against the void, a way of saying that even if this all began as a mistake, the connection we forge within it is real enough to be its own justification. You know that feeling, right? You're scrolling, maybe late at night, and you see something that just hits you. A post about a threatened species, a petition to save a rainforest you'll never visit, a story about a family on the other side of the planet going through something awful. And your heart just swells. You click share, maybe you even donate a couple of bucks to some cause for a child whose face you only see in a single, sad-looking photo. For a moment, there's this warm glow. You feel it. You're a good person. You're compassionate. You're connected to humanity. You're part of the solution. But then, you hear a knock on the door. It's your neighbor. Not the abstract concept of a neighbor, but the real one. The one who plays their music a little too loud. The one whose car is always parked just a few inches over the line, and he needs to borrow a drill again. And in that split second, that grand sweeping love you had for all of humanity just evaporates. It's replaced by this little flash of irritation. That empathy that was so easy to feel for a concept on a screen suddenly feels like a real chore. That noble compassion can curdle into simple resentment the moment it asks you to actually get off the couch. And this is a trap that the philosopher Slavoj Žižek points out with this kind of unsettling clarity. It is dangerously, seductively easy to love humanity as an idea, to champion the cause of the refugee or the poor, as long as they stay a distant, almost romantic figure. But the second that abstract idea becomes a real flesh and blood person standing in front of you, with all their weird habits, their flaws, and their inconvenient requests, that love gets put to a terrifying test. It's like a scene in a movie where a hero gives a soaring speech about saving the people, only to snap at the janitor for getting in his way a minute later. We see this whole thing play out on a massive scale with this strange phenomenon called NIMBYism, or not in my backyard. You look at the polls, and a huge majority of people will say they support noble things, like creating housing for refugees in their country. And you think, yeah, exactly. This is incredible. But the moment a proposal is announced to build that housing in their specific town or on their street, that support can just plummet. The love for the abstract turns into a fear of the concrete. So it really forces you to ask yourself, is that grand compassion we feel for the world just an elaborate performance? A story we tell ourselves to feel good, a way to avoid the much harder, much messier, and much more meaningful work of loving the imperfect person right next to us. So, you know the scene. It's the end of the movie, the music swells, and our two heroes finally kiss in the pouring rain. We've been sold this bill of goods, this fairy tale version of love, as a pure redemptive force that saves us from all the darkness in the world. But let me ask you this, if that's the whole truth, then why do our most legendary love stories, from Catherine and Heathcliff in the windswept moors to 1,000 modern dramas, feel like they're built on the knife's edge between total adoration and total destruction? What they actually show us is something much, much scarier than a fairy tale. What they show us is a glimpse of the truth. Think about those couples we all know, the ones whose passion is so bright it erupts into fury over the smallest thing, the ones who can't live without each other. We've been taught to see that as a flaw, a bug in the system that needs to be fixed. But what if it isn't a bug? What if it's a fundamental feature? The scariest part is the realization that this beautiful thing we call love doesn't arrive alone. It has a shadow, a dark twin that follows it everywhere. This isn't a story of good versus evil. This is a story about two things that are inseparable. This is an idea that thinkers like Slavoj Žižek, drawing on the psychoanalyst Jacques Lacan, would say we've been looking at entirely backwards. When he insists that there is no love without hate, he's not being cynical. He's pointing out that they aren't two separate emotions fighting for control of your heart. They are two sides of the very same coin. Psychologists have even found that the deeper a person reports their love, the more extreme and profound their hatred becomes when that love is betrayed. The potential for one creates the potential for the other. All it takes for that transformation to occur is to invest a piece of yourself so completely in another person that its loss would be a catastrophe. That very act of intense affection is what creates the seed of an equal and opposite devastation. And understanding this isn't to cheapen love, it's to finally grasp how fragile and how terrifyingly powerful it really is. We see it constantly, this grand performance of generosity. A titan of industry, whose fortune could probably be seen from space, makes a dramatic announcement. Billions are pledged to eradicate a disease or to revolutionize education in some far-off corner of the world. And the world, for a moment, collectively sighs in relief. Finally, someone is fixing it. And you might be thinking, what's the problem here? A billionaire is using their money for good. Isn't that what we want? But let's pull on that thread for a second. Where did that immense wealth come from in the first place? What kind of system allows for one person to accumulate enough money to single-handedly fund a nation's health initiatives? And more importantly, does this grand gesture of charity actually challenge that system? Or does it just put a friendly humanitarian face on it? This is where a thinker like Slavoj Žižek steps in with a pretty provocative label for this kind of figure: the liberal communist. He's talking about the ruthless market capitalist who washes their hands of the damage with public displays of love for humanity. Their foundations are a brilliant performance, a way to look like the solution while continuing to benefit from the problem. It's a bit like Lex Luthor building a new hospital for Metropolis. It's a wonderful gesture, sure, but it does absolutely nothing to address the fact that LexCorp's business practices are probably what made the city so sick in the first place. The charity becomes a form of propaganda. It becomes the ultimate enemy of real change because it convinces us the system is self-correcting. Think of the corporation that launches a massive campaign to save a particular rainforest, making them look like planetary heroes. Meanwhile, the core of their business model continues to pollute on a scale that makes their tree-saving project a rounding error. These acts of love, these photogenic moments of compassion, aren't just empty, they're a distraction. They are a spectacle designed to make us feel like progress is happening, while the real machinery causing the harm keeps churning away, conveniently hidden behind the most benevolent mask of all. You know the classic story. It's the plot of 1,000 movies and songs. Love is a lightning strike, a chemical reaction, something that just happens to you when you lock eyes across a crowded room. It's a feeling so powerful and spontaneous that it's completely beyond your control. And if anyone, whether it's your family or society, tries to tell you who to love, we instinctively recoil. That's not romance, we think. That's a prison sentence, an obligation. You can't just choose to fall in love, right? But then you look at the stories that Hollywood almost never tells, and you have to wonder, are the people in arranged marriages who, after years of building a life, feel a love as deep and real as any rom-com couple just faking it? Did they get Stockholm Syndrome and trick themselves into believing a script? Or is it possible that the beginning of the story, whether it's a chance encounter at a coffee shop or a pact between two families, is just the prologue? A thinker like Slavoj Žižek would probably argue that you're right, genuine love can't be commanded from the outside. But the real event isn't the initial setup. The real event is the quiet, internal, and totally autonomous choice each person eventually makes to commit to the other. The initial spark, or lack thereof, is just noise. The brutal choice to build a world with someone, that's the signal. It's always an inside job. So maybe the most romantic question isn't, how did you two meet? But the far more interesting one, when did you decide?